Hi guys and welcome back to Cinema Wrap Up. Today I'm going to explain a sci-fi, horror, thriller movie from 2020, titled Black Box. Spoilers ahead. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Our main protagonist is a man named Nolan. He has previously survived a car crash physically intact, but he's suffering from a bad case of retrograde amnesia. Having lost his wife in the same accident, he is now a single father to his 10-year-old daughter Ava. Stressed out as he grieves about losing his wife, when Nolan tries to get up from the couch, someone suddenly grabs him from behind and begins to choke him aggressively. He is unable to break loose from the chokehold, and as it seems like he's going to be strangled to death, suddenly his daughter Ava comes and shakes him, and the person stops choking him. Because of his amnesia, Nolan has a hard time remembering his past and doing basic daily tasks, such as cooking and picking up his daughter from school. Because of this, Ava must help Nolan with these tasks, and she also has to make excuses for him when he falls short in social settings. As Nolan gets ready for work, Ava shows him a picture of his boss Kathy of 12 years to remind him who she is. She waits for him to say her name, which Nolan gets wrong. He calls her Karen, but Ava corrects him and tells him her name is Kathy. Nolan is the lead photographer for his boss, and he's on his way to present his new photos to her, since surviving the terrible car crash. Before leaving out of the house, Nolan stops and stares at himself in the mirror, and he looks as if he doesn't even recognize who he is anymore. While driving Ava to school, Nolan is having a hard time remembering how to get there. Ava tries to tell him the turn, but he stops her, and after focusing real hard he suddenly remembers, and he hits his turn signal and he makes the correct turn. A short time later, Nolan arrives at his job. He greets his boss Kathy as they embrace and hug. He then pulls out his photo album to present his new sample photos to her. However, Kathy tells him the publisher will not sign off on any of his work, because Nolan's photos doesn't reach the level of his past work. Adamant about getting his job back, he still tries to show her the photos, but Kathy tells him his photos just aren't like they used to be, and with the look of disappointment on his face, Nolan leaves the office unable to get the photography contract, after being out of work for so long. Depressed about his serious state of amnesia, and how it's affecting every aspect of him and his daughter's life, Nolan goes to the hospital, and he decides to opt for an experimental procedure that might help him get his memory back. There at the hospital, Nolan meets with his close friend Dr. Gary. Dr. Gary suggests to Nolan that he should see a woman at the hospital, named Dr. Brooks. Dr. Brooks is one of the leading researchers in the field of neuroscience, and 10 years prior, her and her team has developed a device that would help people who were brain dead and left to die, and this device may be the key to unlocking Nolan's memories. Shortly after that, Nolan heads to Dr. Brooks' office. Nolan asks Dr. Brooks does she think her device will help him overcome his amnesia. She then tells him before she explains the therapy, she needs to confirm that the pathways to his memories aren't totally corrupted. She then asks him, has he ever experienced hypnosis? As Dr. Brooks proceeds to perform the hypnosis on Nolan, she begins the session by telling him to relax and let go of everything around him, and allow his muscles to fall into the seat. Then she tells him to look to the plus symbol on the wall, and completely focus on it. She tells him to focus on the center of the symbol, as Nolan's eyes begins to get heavy and fall, and he slowly begins to slip into a deep trance. Nolan then awakens, in the deep depths of his subconscious mind. He then starts to panic, as he hears the eerie sound of a creature, slowly approaching him in the darkness. And suddenly, a monstrous hand reaches out and grabs his shoulder, and it frightens Nolan and he immediately snaps out of the hypnotic trance. He tells Dr. Brooks that, whatever that thing is lurking in his mind, is the same thing he always sees in his nightmares. She then tells him, that in all her years she's been doing this, nobody ever sees anything in their subconscious mind only until after multiple sessions, and the fact that he could see something that fast, means Nolan's subconscious mind is very active. She then tells him his brain isn't as handicapped as he thinks it is, and she tells him his memories are deep but they are still there, and she also believes that her treatment can reverse his condition. However, after being frightened by what he's seen in his subconscious mind, Nolan doesn't agree to the treatment, and he tells her he needs some time to think about it. Back at home, as Nolan goes through his mail he hears the doorbell ring. He quickly opens the door to see, Ava's teacher has dropped her home, and this is also the third time she's had to do this. She tells Nolan that if this happens one more time, the school is going to notify child services. Nolan then goes to apologize to Ava who's crying in her room. Ava tells him that she's sorry for making his life so difficult, and she tells him that because he was angry at her yesterday and today, she feels as though he's been very annoyed with her. Nolan then tells Ava, the only reason he's been forgetting to pick her up from school is because he's sick, and that if it wasn't for her, who knows where he'd be. Ava doesn't believe him and she cuts the convo short, and tells him she better go make dinner, Nolan tells her she doesn't have to make dinner tonight, however Ava tells him she has to make dinner, because if she doesn't, who will? The following day, Nolan goes to the hospital to meet with Dr. Brooks, and he decides to get the treatment. She then explains the procedure to Nolan. She tells him they call the headset he's going to wear the black box. First you will put him under hypnosis to open his subconscious, then an EEG will read his brain waves and send them to a processor. Then the processor will extract the key memories from his brain waves, and convert those memories into an immersive virtual experience. She then puts the EEG and the black box onto Nolan's head. The cursor begins to move very fast from side to side. The pace of the cursor then speeds up tremendously, and soon after, Nolan can be seen falling under the hypnotic trance. Nolan awakens in a child's bedroom, but it doesn't seem to be his daughter's bedroom. Dr. Brooks then tells him nothing can harm him there, but whatever he does, he shouldn't leave out the bedroom door, because if he does she will not be able to bring him back. Dr. Brooks then tells Nolan to pick up the watch that's on the table. She tells him the watch is going to help him navigate through his memories, by pushing the crown of the watch, and turning it forward and backwards. Nolan presses the crown of the watch, and it immediately jumps him to a past memory where he's getting married. A woman in a wedding dress then can be seen walking down the aisle. He goes to lift up her wedding veil, and he is surprised to see that her face isn't clear, along with the pastor's face, and everyone else in the church. Nolan is then terrified when he sees a monstrous man quickly crawling towards him, and as the entity jumps to attack him, he quickly presses the crown on the watch, and it immediately jumps him out of the trance. Nolan tells Dr. Brooks that something tried to attack him, despite him being very afraid after telling her this. She tells Nolan that he's doing just fine, and she insists that they keep pushing to reverse his condition. The following day after picking up Ava from school, he asks her if she minds if they make a quick stop before heading home. Not long after, Nolan arrives at an apartment building he's seen in his memories, while receiving the treatment from Dr. Brooks. Nolan and Ava enters the building, and as Nolan stares at the steps, he suddenly gets a vision of a man violently falling down the stairs. He then goes up the stairs, and he stops at a specific apartment he's also seen in his memories. Nolan knocks, and a young girl comes and answers the door. He asks her if he can speak to her mother, and when the young girl goes to get her, Nolan walks in the apartment, and he is flabbergasted when he realizes it's the exact same apartment that he's been seeing while using Dr. Brooks' black box. He then looks over to see the girl's mother laying on the couch, and before she gets to say anything, Nolan apologizes for being there and he quickly leaves her apartment. Following that, Nolan goes to the hospital for his next appointment with Dr. Brooks, and before seeing her, he tells Dr. Gary to write down the address of the woman's apartment he's just been at. After finding the woman and her daughter in the apartment, Nolan believes that he may have been cheating on his wife. However, Gary reassures Nolan that despite of him not remembering his past, that he didn't cheat on his wife and he was in fact a good husband. Meanwhile, Dr. Gary becomes suspicious of Dr. Brooks. He begins to look into Nolan's file, and he realizes that there are some irregularities in his case. Nolan's file says he went brain dead upon arrival at the hospital, but he was suddenly transferred to neuroevaluation, which is ran by Dr. Brooks. After being seen by Dr. Brooks, Nolan somehow regained consciousness, miraculously after him suffering from brain death. Nolan then arrives at Dr. Brooks' office for his final treatment. She sets up the EEG and the black box, and she hits a button and sends him back into his subconscious mind. Nolan lifts the woman's veil, and the eerie person suddenly appears and begins to crawl towards him. And as he goes to place the ring on the woman's finger, the mysterious person finally gets close. It slowly rises up in front of Nolan. And it quickly turns around and smacks Nolan, and he lands back in the bedroom. Nolan turns the watch, and it jumps him forward to the woman's apartment. He quickly leaves the room, and he finds the same woman from the wedding in the kitchen, seeming to be very distraught. The woman's daughter, which is a baby in the memory, can also be heard crying very loud in the background. Then he suddenly looks over to see the mysterious entity climbing out of the baby's crib. The mysterious entity gets very close to Nolan and slowly rises to its feet, but Nolan quickly kicks him very hard into a chair, and he knocks him unconscious. Nolan goes back to the kitchen, and the woman's face is now visible, and he seems very sad, as he looks down at her arms and sees terrible bruises, indicating she's a victim of domestic violence. He then turns the watch's crown, and the memory switches back to the bedroom. Nolan then gets up and he walks to the window. He opens the curtain and looks at his reflection only to realize he is not Nolan, but he's actually Dr. Brooks' son, Thomas. Thomas calls out to his mother, as she embraces his hand and holds it, as she cries tears of joy, happy to finally have her son back with her. After unplugging Thomas from the black box, she explains to Thomas that when he slipped down the stairs, the medics brought him to the hospital, and he was still alive, but it was already too late, because the doctors couldn't save him. She then tells him before he died, she mapped out his consciousness and uploaded it to the black box, so that she could download his consciousness into a suitable host when one arrived. Thomas is unable to fathom that his mother has stolen a man's body, and placed his consciousness into him. He then tells her, is he supposed to just go about life just pretending to be Nolan? However, she gives him 2 of his family pictures and tells him, now he has a second shot to make it right with his wife, and be the father and man she knows he's capable of being. Before leaving he asks her what about Ava, and she simply tells him that Ava isn't his daughter. Following that, Thomas arrives at Dr. Gary's house, and he's there to drop Ava off. She doesn't say nothing before leaving. However, before she gets out the car, she writes a message in the palm of his hand, then she exits the car. Unaware that Thomas is now in control of Nolan's body, he tells him that he found out that Dr. Brooks took him into her lab when he was in a coma, but Thomas, who's well aware of what his mother has done, simply replies okay. Dr. Gary then asks him, does that not seem strange to him, and Thomas shakes his head no. The conversation ends with Thomas angrily telling Gary, he just needs a few days away from Ava, and although confused as to what's going on, Gary takes Ava and he lets him leave. Then as Thomas drives to go see his wife and daughter, he looks to see what Ava wrote in the palm of his hand, and it says, don't forget me. A short time later, Thomas arrives at his wife Miranda's house, and he begs her for a few minutes of her time. She agrees to talk, and she lets him come in. Thomas begins to explain his mother's black box project, which Miranda refers to as digital voodoo. However, he tells her it wasn't just some digital voodoo, because his mother actually pulled it off and got it to work. He then tells her that he's Thomas. And for a few seconds Miranda just stares at Thomas, trying to comprehend what he's claiming. However, she doesn't believe he's Thomas, and she gets very angry and demands he leaves her house immediately. As Miranda walks to the door, she tells him he has 5 seconds or she's calling the cops. He then proves to her that he's really Thomas, by telling her whenever she was nervous, he would take her by the hand, and write on the back of it with his fingers, the word okay. After revealing something so intimate, that only her and Thomas shared between each other, she finally begins to believe him. He tells her, that this is a second chance for them to rewrite their relationship, and a second chance for him to make things right again, and he tells her, he's not going to hurt her anymore. Emotional, Miranda tells Thomas he should just leave. This immediately angers Thomas, as his body language quickly changes, and he angrily tells her he died and now he's here. Then he loudly shouts in her face, does any of that mean nothing to her? Thomas then gets in her face about to hit her, but he suddenly stops when he hears his daughter in the other room. As he walks away to go to the bedroom, Miranda quickly grabs him by the arm. Thomas then slams her against the wall, and he tells her don't ever touch him again. He then enters his daughter's room, but her back is turned and she's listening to music, so she doesn't notice him. And as he stands there watching his daughter, Miranda quickly creeps up from behind, and knocks him unconscious with a powerful blow to the back of his head, and the scene goes black. In the following scene, Nolan arrives to Gary's house, and he's standing in front of Ava weak and disoriented. He then feels the back of his head, and his fingers can be seen covered in blood. Dr. Gary then tries to approach Thomas to help him, but he pulls away from him and he takes off running to the car. As Thomas reaches the car, he's terrified to see Nolan suddenly appear, as a monstrous figure as his reflection in the car window. He then jumps in the car and he quickly takes off, as Dr. Gary chases behind him, screaming for him to come back. Afterwards, Gary looks in the palm of his hand, to see the address that Nolan previously told him to write down. He then sits down beside Ava, and he asks to borrow her tablet to search the address. When Gary brings up the address on the tablet, Ava notices the familiar building, and she tells Gary, that's the same building her and Nolan previously visited. He then clicks a link associated with the address, and an article pops up that reads, son of renowned doctor previously died, after a tragic staircase fall. He then zooms in on a picture of Thomas Brooks, and at this very moment he comes to realize, Dr. Brooks is secretly behind whatever is happening to Nolan. On the other side, Thomas goes to the hospital to see his mother. After seeing the vision of Nolan appear in the car's window, he tells her, he wants to get rid of Nolan for good. She then tells him to think of Nolan as a virus and kill him, and it will stop all traumatic responses that's happening to his body in the physical realm. She then activates the black box, putting Thomas under the hypnotic trance, and he soon awakens, in Nolan's subconscious mind. Then as Thomas looks at a picture of his daughter, he suddenly turns his head, when he hears Nolan trying to open the front door. A very weakened Nolan then enters the apartment, as he stands before Thomas. Thomas then tells his mother that Nolan has arrived, and she tells him to remember why he's there, and kill Nolan. A fight then quickly ensues, as Thomas walks up and he punches Nolan in the face. He then slams him to the ground, and he continues brutally punching Nolan in the face. And as Nolan lays there beaten to a bloody pulp, Thomas grabs a knife, and he approaches Nolan to finish him off. As Thomas speaks inside of his subconscious mind, Dr. Brooks is able to hear him on the other side, and as he gets ready to kill Nolan, he tells her to get ready, to replace what's left of Nolan's subconscious mind with his own. Dr. Brooks then initiates a timer, to finish downloading Thomas's subconscious mind when Nolan is dead. Then as Thomas goes to stab Nolan, he suddenly stops when he hears Ava on the other side, calling out to her father. Dr. Brooks has convinced Thomas that Nolan is actually dead, and he's only killing what's left of his subconscious mind, so that he can take over his physical body. But when Thomas hears Ava calling out to her father, he then realizes his mother has lied to him, and Nolan is actually still alive. However, Dr. Brooks tells him she hasn't lied to him and he needs to kill Nolan. Thomas believes her, and when he goes to stab Nolan, he hears Ava still calling out to her father. He suddenly stops and Thomas gets a flashback to the day he lost his life, after he was physically abusing his wife and daughter. In the flashback, Thomas can be seen hitting his wife Miranda, while his daughter stands there watching in fear. The daughter then can be seen pushing Thomas off of Miranda, and this infuriates Thomas and he kicks his daughter to the ground. Miranda then grabs Thomas and throws him down the stairs, which ultimately resulted in Thomas breaking all of his bones and losing his life. After remembering this horrendous occurrence, Thomas lets go of Nolan, and he drops the knife. Then as Thomas stands there and looks at a picture of his family, he realizes he doesn't want to take Thomas away from his daughter and destroy his family, the same way he destroyed his own. Thomas then walks out of the apartment, and he can be seen sitting in total darkness, as the look of grief sits upon his face, while he sits there and thinks about what he has caused. Dr. Brooks then unplugs him from the black box, who she thinks is her son Thomas, as she holds his hand embracing it close to her body. But when Nolan lets go of Dr. Brooks' hand, and he reaches for his daughter, she then realizes that Thomas is no longer in control of Nolan's body anymore. Then Nolan and Ava do their signature handshake that Nolan forgot because of his amnesia, and this indicates that Nolan has now gained back some very important parts of his memories, and now him and Ava can go back to having a healthy loving father and daughter relationship. Following that, as Miranda reads a newspaper article, she finds out that the hospital has fired Dr. Brooks, after the patient scandal concerning Nolan is exposed by Dr. Gary. In the final sequences of the film, Dr. Brooks can be seen repairing the black box, and trying to run Thomas's mapped consciousness, and this seems to work as the black box suddenly turns on and begins illuminating a bright light. She then looks into the black box, and she says his name and smiles, and the movie ends here. To watch more recaps of these kinds of movies, click on the thumbnail on your screen and don't forget to leave a comment down below. Kindly like the video and subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my new videos. And until next time, stay safe and take care.